I'm John McKee, editor of Messianic Apologetics, messianicapologetics.net. And I would like to welcome you to this episode of Messianic Insider, your theology and news roundup for September the 15th, 2025. For certain, as we have been looking back at the events of the past several days over the weekend, there are many things we need to be taking before the Lord. In just about a week, we will be commemorating the fall high holidays. Next Monday evening, we'll begin Rosh Hashanah, or the Festival of Trumpets. And then 10 days later, after the 10 days of awe, Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement. And this is a very important time for Messianic people, especially as they reflect back on the previous year, look forward to the next year. And there are a lot of things in the world which I doubtlessly believe the Lord has grabbed the attention of many people on. Number one, are you praying for peace? Israel, Gaza, the Middle East. Number two, are you praying for peace? Russia, Ukraine. Number three, are you praying for sanity and reason to prevail here on the American home front? So there are a lot of things out there we need to be concerned about and we need to be taking before the Lord. And I am not entirely sure how many of our leaders and persons of influence right now are stressing these matters. But while it may seem from time to time that Messianic Apologetics is a voice in the wilderness, we are doing the best we can do to make a difference. All right, so let's get started on our episode for today. Before we get into some of the material, we do this every Monday. If you have not already, please do go to the Messianic Apologetics website. Here in the right-hand column, you see blog notifications. Be automatically notified by email when Messianic Apologetics is updated. You can put your email address in there, and then it will ask you to confirm. This is so whenever we send out or we post something new to our site or we reintroduce something old, you will receive an automatic notification for that. That's different from our email update list, which you can subscribe to via the envelope icon up in the right-hand corner. Those are specific updates we have to send out as we would be doing for this episode when it concludes later this afternoon. All right, now you all do know that within the next week, the fall high holidays will begin. If you have not, I highly encourage you to get a copy of our ministry publication, the Messianic Fall Holiday Helper. It's available in both paperback as well as ebook for Amazon Kindle. So a lot of information in here, not just about the traditions of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, but it'll take you through a number of the traditional Bible passages and books which are considered during this time. There's 10 days of reflection for the 10 days of awe, reflections on the book of Ecclesiastes, and also many different questions and answers for this season. All right, so let's get into our theology roundup. Our theology roundup today is taken from our ministry book, When Will the Messiah Return? The Dangers of Pre-Tribulationism. We're going to be referring to this in a lot of teachings in the future, but this is the combined volume we released at the end of June, right before the Messiah 2025 conference. Also available paperback and ebook for Amazon Kindle. All right, let me switch windows really quickly, and we'll get into this. There we go. Excellent. And we're going to be briefly discussing the assembly of Laodicea. Now, many people, when they read the book of Revelation, in particular chapters 1 through 3, you see how the Messiah directed specific messages to the 7 assemblies, the 7 ecclesias. And without doubt, those specific messages bore great significance for ancient, late 1st, early 2nd century believers. It's also generally believed among premillennialists that each one of those 7 assemblies tends to represent some kind of period of history in the faith leading up to the return of the Messiah. You'll see people who are dispensational, not dispensational, adhere to that. And every kind of assembly, although there are other kinds of assemblies as well, you look at the apostolic letters, exists today. And so many people have looked at the assembly of Laodicea as representing the prominent end time assembly. Most of the claiming believers, it's widely thought, in the days leading up to the Messiah's return are going to classify as Laodicean in some way. So how does that play into what we're possibly witnessing today? The message to Laodicea. This is a relatively short overview. Yeshua the Messiah, who fully affirmed himself to be the Amen, the faithful and true witness, the beginning of the creation of God, Revelation 3:14, New American Standard, had only negative words for those at Laodicea. The name Laodicea is derived from the Greek laos, meaning people. This is why various interpreters extrapolate the meaning of Laodicea being the justice or rule of the people. The Lord's rebuke to those of Laodicea was that, I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish that you were cold or hot. Revelation 3:15, New American Standard. This was not an idle statement, as ancient Laodicea boasted an impressive water delivery system. Quote, the water supply came from the spring now called Baspanar in the upper part of Denzili. An aqueduct, part of which still survives, carried the water from that spring by force of gravity to a clearing basin on the south side of Laodicea, and from there it was piped under pressure to a water tower that fed a water basin and feeding chambers, which in turn fed the fountains, unquote. F. Bruce from the Anchor Bible Dictionary. Of course, what is notable is that by the time water would finally reach the people, it would arrive in a very lukewarm state, neither hot nor cold. It is concluded among many today that the Laodicean congregation has represented the predominant Christian body from 1900 to the present, one which publicly says it is sincere for the Messiah, but has, at least privately, compromised itself with the world. And this is actually the feeling of many pre-tribulationists, and not just post-tribulationists. Yeshua admonished this assembly with some hard words. So, because you were lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. Revelation 3:16, New American Standard. The Message has a good paraphrase of this rebuke. You're stale, you're stagnant, you make me want to vomit. Whereas, listen to this, hot water or cold water can be used for medicinal or refreshing purposes. Lukewarm water is effectively worthless. By extension, was the Laodicean assembly effectively worthless? The Messiah told the congregates at Laodicea, I advise you to buy from me gold refined by fire, so that you may become rich, and white garments, so that you may clothe yourself, and that the shame of your nakedness will not be revealed, and eye salve to anoint your eyes so that you may see. Those whom I love, I reproof and discipline. Therefore, be zealous and repent. Revelation 3:18 and 19, New American Standard. Yeshua told the Laodiceans to clearly repent of their sins and that they needed to be refined, perhaps an indication that they would be forced into some sort of difficulty or tribulation for such refinement. Fortunately, he also said that he who overcomes, I will grant to him to sit down with me on my throne, as I also overcame and sat down with my Father on his throne. Revelation 3:21, New American Standard. As they are to look to the Messiah's example as one to emulate, many will persevere through the refinement and be rewarded for it. Those of Laodicea who overcome the obstacle of being only half devoted to the Lord are promised that they will sit down next to him on his throne. And that concludes our brief teaching on the assembly at Laodicea. And indeed, it is my plan, hopefully in the next 2 weeks or so, we'll address one or two of the other assemblies, which gets a lot of attention, especially in debates between pre- and post-tribulationists. All right, let me switch windows back. Okay, there we go. Excellent. And once again, this teaching has been taken from our ministry's combined publication, When Will the Messiah Return? The Dangers of Pre-Tribulationism. This is a lot of information in that volume. And of course, right now, it is unavoidable that there are many, many, many people out there who are talking about prophecy and the end times. And that is why we have our news roundup. Very few people in the Messianic sphere of influence are doing anything like this. All right, so our news roundup. We always do the news roundup after the theology roundup because, of course, the news cycle changes from day to day. This mostly includes stories which I passively encounter on social media, although from time to time, you all will direct message me with something you think we need to see. We're doing our best to stay grounded as possible, because if we don't talk about these things on a regular basis, somebody else will. And somebody else will probably do so in a manner which tends to promote fear and paranoia rather than calmness and sanity. Now, all these links I'm about to go through, they will be available for you to look through yourself later today when this episode is archived at messianicapologetics.net. And of course, we have a lot to go through from the weekend, matters of Israel, the Middle East, a few Russia-Ukraine stories, and of course, the main thing which has grabbed everyone's attention here on the American home front, the tragic assassination, death of Charlie Kirk. And with that said, there are a lot of people who have raised the question, when you went to church on Sunday this weekend, did the pastor bother to mention Charlie Kirk? And at least say, look, there's a terrible tragedy which has happened in our society. Pray for his wife, Erica Kirk, his two small children, and pray that while this situation continues to be investigated and unfolds, everyone maintains their cool. Now, I don't know what took place at your local Messianic congregation or not, whether the rabbi or congregational leader bothered to say anything. At my own congregation, there was Kaddish at the end of the service, and the cantor mentioned that, yes, there's this terrible tragedy with Charlie Kirk. But every congregation is different. And indeed, based on what we see unfolding right now, in the world. How many people with the fall high holidays coming up are going to be mentioning in their different high holiday teachings and messages some of these situations? How many others are going to be in their little bubble? And I would even say, how many people in North American Messianic Judaism have put themselves in a shtetl of their own making? And shtetl is a little different than just sitting in your own little bubble, whether that's a local synagogue, church, assembly bubble, fellowship bubble, or your denominational bubble. That's everyone has been caught in their own bubble from some time to time. Shtetl is, of course, a term from Eastern Europe. Many of you are familiar with Fiddler on the Roof, Anatevka. Anatevka was, kind of a shtetl, this very closed Jewish community. You look to members of your community for answers about this, answers about that. Doesn't interact with outsiders unless it absolutely has to. If you were an Eastern European Jew in the shtetl, you're in a closed community. And how much of that mindset has transferred over to North American Messianic Judaism? We're going to find out in the days to come, the next few years, as North American Messianic Judaism develops or not so much. We'll wait and see. It's their free will. I'll tell you that right now. But that is something I am desperately concerned about, that we haven't sufficiently modernized, and everybody gets challenged when you see a major world event take place. And in this year, of course, we had the re-election of Donald Trump, first president since Grover Cleveland to have 2 non-consecutive terms. We've seen the 12-day war, Israel and Iran. We've seen the ongoing crisis, Russia and Ukraine. We see an emerging Eastern Bloc with China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, possibly even India emerging. And we've got these big dramas here on the American home front. Most recent one was the death of Charlie Kirk. We've got things which are going to be coming out regarding Russiagate from the 2016 election, the Epstein files. What else? Biden's auto pen. I mean, there are a lot of things which are intended to grab our attention, and I'm not sure as many as should be paying attention are. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe your situation is different. Okay. But that's why we do the news analysis, to stay up to speed and to not shy away from the different matters of the day. All right, our first story, this came across my Instagram feed. This is from Bannon's War Room, Steve Bannon. I know a lot of people who follow Steve Bannon because he's associated with the MAGA movement, the conservative movement here in America. So, yeah, there are going to be things we agree with Steve Bannon about, but also disagree. And here you see Steve Bannon commenting on the matter of Israel. And, of course, he's been very pro-Israel in the past, but in this clip talks about they're not an ally, they're a protectorate. They never fought shoulder to shoulder with us anywhere. And in his estimation, Netanyahu and his government are not only destroying the state of Israel and are going to turn it into a Jewish Pakistan, they're hurting the Jewish community throughout the world. And in this clip, and you can watch it later in full, he even kind of clips the edges of the greater Israel conspiracy theory that the state of Israel wants to take over, basically, most of the Middle East. So we'll just wait and see. I mean, we know that the news cycle changes from day to day, but, we've seen Candace Owens go her way, Tucker Carlson go his way. We're going to be paying attention to some of these other conservative influencers and see how they go. So you can watch that in further detail. All right. Per the situation in the Middle East, this is from Zero Hedge. Turkey in Netanyahu's crosshairs for harboring Hamas after Qatar strike. So this article goes through how, of course, last week we saw Israel attack Hamas headquarters in Qatar. What do we do if Turkey might be harboring Hamas leaders. Turkey is not a reliable friend of the West. And of course, what makes this something very complicated is that Turkey is a member of NATO. And for years, Turkey has been trying to join the European Union, but just can't quite make it because, or for whatever reason. And now Turkey tends to be moving more back in the direction of the Middle East, the Muslim world, tries to present itself as European, not really European. This is how complicated things are becoming. All right, so here's a clip. This is from Visegrad 24. You need to watch this in detail. At the University of Amsterdam, students said Charlie Kirk being shot to death was justified. And here, people saying, yeah, it was a good thing. And yes, and I actually mean it. There is nothing justifiable for any person on earth to gloat or to rejoice over the death of another human being, whether you agree with them or not. We do not rejoice over the deaths of Hamas terrorists. Because guess what? They are being sent, in all probability, to a Messiah-less eternity. But to see some people rejoice over the death of Charlie Kirk, that's just really despicable, and it indicates that a lot of people, especially in Europe, they're being raised without going to church, without God, without the Bible, and their moral compass reveals their ethical vacuum. Now, not all hope is lost. God has his people everywhere. This is also posted the 12th of September by Visegrad. So here you see Christ is King chants the crowd at Charlie Kirk's vigil in London tonight. So there are a lot of people out there all over the world, especially that vigil in London. They are mourning. They are recognizing this as a watershed moment in more modern Western history. Okay, so I'm sure many of you have seen at least clips of Charlie Kirk's beloved wife, Mrs. Erica Kirk, addresses the nation. This is about 30 minutes. This is from September the 12th, 7:12 p.m. So, she's mourning. She was able to pull it together, do the right thing, talked about, we'll get into this in a moment, but talk about, honoring her husband's legacy, how conservatives are not going to be silenced. There are going to be a lot of people who sort through the legacy and impact of Charlie Kirk. Whether you agreed 100% with him or not wasn't the point. The point is he encouraged dialogue on the issues of the day, recognizing that we have a freedom of speech, especially here in the United States. If we don't use it, we will lose it. That's the main part of his legacy. All right, this is from the 12th of September from Ynet Global. Trump administration questions Netanyahu. Every time there's progress, he bombs someone. Trump and aides are concerned Israel's strike on Hamas leaders in Qatar may have permanently derailed hostage talks and question whether Netanyahu is intentionally undermining them, complicating U.S.-led mediation in the region. Okay, people do talk about Netanyahu's strategy in going after terrorists, especially going after them in Qatar. Qatar is a U.S. ally. Okay, but Qatar has also been known to sponsor terrorism in part, be soft on terrorism, provide a place for Hamas terrorists, and of course, we know these kinds of things go day to day, week to week, but there are people, certainly here in the U.S., even on the political right, they wonder progress has seemingly been made, and then Netanyahu does something, and progress gets derailed. Okay. What it ultimately leads to is that question, who's going to be able to solve the Middle East problem? And this is where anti-Messiah, antichrist speculation enters into the mix. But we know the news cycle does change day to day. From Open Source Intel Defender, this is from the 12th of September, additional photos found online of 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, the suspect in custody for Wednesday's murder of conservative personality and commentator Charlie Kirk during an event at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. If convicted, Tyler faces the death penalty, as publicly called for by Utah Governor Spencer J. Cox and U.S. President Donald J. Trump. And there, of course, you have pictures of Tyler Robinson. So there's going to be a lot of discussion about this. As I have already said several times, I even posted on X yesterday about this. We are still number one in the condolence mourning phase. Charlie Kirk has not yet had his funeral. The second phase is, of course, the investigation. We've got to let the legal process, go through its different machinations of looking into this, charging Tyler Robinson. There's going to have to be a trial, probably a conviction. There's going to be that phase. But then the third thing, and this is the long-term phase, this is what affects all of us, and it's the legacy of Charlie Kirk. It's what he did, the questions he asked, how people carry on in his memory, whether we're going to see more and more young people, Generation Z in particular, take an interest in what is happening in their communities, in the world, whether they realize or not that some of our rights and liberties as Americans are under threat, the ability to have free speech, free exchange of ideas, to discuss hot issues, and evaluating some of the negative legacy left to us by the baby boomers or the millennials, even Generation X is in between that. How various religious leaders did not permit certain issues to be brought up and discussed. Because it's in that exchange of ideas where we figure out as individuals, as men and women, who we are and what we stand for and what our values are. Looking at that clip from the University of Amsterdam, and there, thousands of others just like that from all over the world, even here on the American home front. How many young people have just been fed what to believe from social media? They've got no critical thinking skills at all. They don't question anything. And a lot of their teachers, leaders, etc., just allow it to continue. How many parents haven't invested the necessary time and effort to talk to their children? How many pastors, how many spiritual leaders haven't invested the right amount of time in the young people discussing the issues of the day? And you didn't have to agree with everything Charlie Kirk, stood for in order to recognize that the lack of talking to people about things is why we are presently in the mess we are in. Okay, so you all should probably watch this clip. This is 3 minutes, 44 seconds from Greg Gutfeld. I'll catch him, maybe a couple of times a week. From Greg Gutfeld's monologue, this is from Nick Sorter, was fully dedicated to honoring Charlie Kirk. So this is from September the 12th. This shall backfire. Look at the history of those murdered because they were good. Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream did not die with him, or JFK's or Lincoln's. Their legacy grows, and Charlie's will too, beyond his wildest dreams. If you want to kill an idea, of the worst thing you can do is kill the man behind it, because that gives the idea not just legs, but also wings. And also millions of louder and stronger voices, ours and yours. I mean, think about this for a moment. Somebody wanted to assassinate Charlie Kirk, believing that his organization, his message would be shut down as a result. All you're going to do is create millions of mini Charlie Kirks, whether that person was 100% a duplicate or not. I mean, one of the reasons we do what we do, and we have changed this year into addressing more current events, is precisely because if we do not exercise our gift of free speech and somebody doesn't step up and talk about the issues of the day, number one, people like me are going to have to stand before God. I gave you the time. I gave you the energy. I gave you the resources to do this. Why were you silent? Were you silent because of possible blowback from the boomers, from Generation X, from those who were in control, or because you were lazy and you didn't want to speak your mind on what mattered to you. In my case, I've got not just a religious studies degree, but a political science degree. I've got to make use of these. One of these days, we're not going to have this ability. And screw the system. Speak out. Speak your mind. Okay, many of you all have seen this. This circulated in many different forms on social media over the weekend. This is from the New York Post. Charlie Kirk's widow, Erica, shared heartbreaking photos weeping over her husband's casket in her first post since his assassination. This 36-year-old mom of two whispered, "I love you," and a final goodbye, and even vowed to carry on his mission even stronger. So, yeah, the first thing that hit me when I saw this picture is cherry casket, just like my father, and from 33 years ago. And in one of the pictures, you also got to see Charlie Kirk's hands. Okay, this isn't in this clip. We're going to have to get into this. Is going to come up later on, because there are some people in the conspiracy world who are claiming that Charlie Kirk didn't die from some of the pictures of his casket, particularly with his hands. But yeah, that you're not going to be able to see any more of Charlie Kirk. At his funeral, it will be closed casket. Most of the time when you have a very high profile individual, you don't see their remains at all. But based on some of those pictures, we'll get into a video which came across my feed late last night. Some are claiming that's not Charlie Kirk. It is. But yes, pray for Erica Kirk. Pray for their family. From what I can tell, they were married only about 4 years. Yeah, and this is going to be a huge turning point in their own lives, and hopefully a defining moment in their lives. That's what you do with a tragedy like this. Okay, Newsmax. Pope Leo calls for culture of reconciliation following Kirk's murder. Yes, and that's exactly what the Pope should have said. And I don't know how much or how little the Pope agreed or disagreed with him, but the Pope said the right thing. Okay, this is a good thing to flip through. This is from Zero Hedge. Charlie Kirk's widow breaks silence. You have no idea what you just unleashed across nation. And indeed, for many of us, this is an event which is going to strongly galvanize us to speak out and speak our minds. You try to take somebody out like this, you're not going to silence the message, you're only going to intensify it. Unfortunately, we know far too frequently in our ministry experience, God often has to use some kind of drama in order to get people to be shaken out of their composure. It's not business as usual anymore. It hasn't been since we entered into the 2020s. We can't act like it is. And for Americans, some of our rights and privileges and liberties enshrined in our Constitution, they're under threat. So we have to make the most of them while we've got them. Okay, so here's another one. This is from September the 12th. Jesse Waters new. Benny Johnson gets emotional after Erica Kirk's touching tribute to Charlie. And Benny Johnson, this is a little over 3 minutes. Charlie Kirk wasn't killed because of the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. Charlie Kirk was killed because of the First Amendment, the right to free speech. Charlie will become stronger in martyrdom. So some of you all have seen the term martyrdom employed about Charlie Kirk. Okay, we're going to switch over to some of the other world venues right now. Here we have from Open Source Intel Defender. This is September the 13th, 10:53 a.m. So here in Central Time, this was Saturday morning. Shelter-in-place orders have been issued for residents in northern Romania near the border with Ukraine within the last hour, warning of the possibility of Russian one-way attack drones landing inside of Romania. Okay, so we know from last week, Russian drones were in Poland. How much of this is just, they went off course? How much of this is deliberate? Is Putin trying to test NATO, trying to see what else he can do beyond the Ukrainian conflict? Pray for peace, Russia and Ukraine. We don't need to see this thing get any larger. We need to see it stop. From open source intel, this is from Saturday morning, September the 13th. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The Hamas terrorist chiefs living in Qatar don't care about the people in Gaza. They blocked all ceasefire attempts in order to endlessly drag out the war. Getting rid of them would rid the main obstacle to releasing all our hostages and ending the war. Pressure is building. The Israel-Gaza situation in the Middle East. Okay, this was useful to pass on to you. It's a good clip, 34 seconds, from Vivid, U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee. Israel needs an ally. The Jewish people need to know they have friends. As a Christian, I say to my Jewish friends, you'll never go through what you go through alone. We'll stand with you. And she says, God bless him. Indeed, when we think about when we are right now, Israel, the Jewish people, need as many allies and friends as they can get. And since October the 7th, and we're fast approaching the 2-year anniversary, we've seen anti-Semitism on the rise, anti-Zionism on the rise, anti-Judaism on the rise. Don't think that what's happening in the Middle East today does not affect, for example, academic discussions on the Bible, academic discussions involving Second Temple Judaism, things like Paul within Judaism. It does affect. And when you have a Jewish scholar get up and try to talk about Jesus and Judaism, Paul and Judaism, don't think that the Middle East situation today doesn't affect people who encounter that kind of information. It does. And we don't need to be naive about that, because I know a lot of people right now, particularly in Messianic Jewish theology, especially one law type stuff, they're in a bubble. They're not paying attention really to what's happening in the world around them. They've got their head in the sand. Not going to say the other thing. And they're not realizing it's not business as usual anymore. All right, our next story. This is important. This is a clip passed on from Stand With Us by Open Source Intel, 3 minutes, 41 seconds. Charlie Kirk wasn't too impressed with personalities like Candace Owens. He called them demonic. Charlie Kirk was a friend of Israel, the Jewish people. He called out anti-Semitism as he saw it. But it is true that there are conspiracy people out there who are saying it wasn't some lone gunman who took out Charlie Kirk, someone who'd been radicalized by what he read online. There are other parties involved. We'll get into that in just a moment. Or he's not really dead. Charlie Kirk, unfortunately, is no longer alive here on planet Earth. I believe, as I'm sure most of you agree, he's in the presence of the Savior. And he is among those martyrs described in the book of Revelation. How long, O Lord? Let's get on with salvation history. But we who are on earth today, we've got our work to do here, furthering the interests of the kingdom. Okay, Open Source Intel posted a number of these things September the 13th, 4:34, so Saturday afternoon. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, is expected to meet with Netanyahu to discuss the possibility of Israel taking sovereignty over parts of Judea and Samaria in response to the anticipated recognition of the state of Palestine by several Western countries later this month. All right. Now, many of you all know about the summit, which was recently held about responding to Israel bombing Hamas headquarters in Qatar. This is from Sunday morning, open source intel. Qatar Prime Minister Mohammed al-Thani, or Thani, called Israel's strike on Hamas leaders in Doha a dangerous escalation and state terrorism, vowing Qatar will defend its sovereignty while continuing mediation efforts to end the Gaza war. Yeah, this is the area where a number of people just get really upset about. It seems that progress gets made, and then later, Israel does something. Whether you like that or not, that's not the point. We're just looking at how these patterns are playing out. Okay, this got passed along from open source intel. Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani urged an Arab Islamic alliance against Israel, proposing a joint security force ahead of the Doha summit. Many Arab countries are not happy that Israel will take out Hamas leaders anywhere. Now, the one reason I forwarded that on, of course, we know that the United States has had a presence in Iraq going back to the 2003 conflict. And I mention that more than anything else because there are, among certain schools of thought in prophecy, there are those who believe that when you look at the phenomenon of Babylon in prophecy, that it has multiple components to it. The term Bavel would simply mean confusion by mixing. You've got ancient Babylon on the plains of Shinar in the Middle East. You've got an aspect of Babylon represented by the city of Rome. And you've got aspects of Babylon represented by just the corrupt world system. Many associate Revelation 17 and 18 with Babylon as the city of Rome. I would lean in that direction myself. But you also have Babylon, Jeremiah 50 and 51. Is that a future prophecy? And if so, is it Babylon in the Middle East, some kind of rebuilt Babylon in the Middle East? And we all talk about, rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem. But, a rebuilt Babylon in the Middle East would be and we know Saddam Hussein was responsible for rebuilding certain aspects of ancient Babylon. That would be in Iraq. So that's what kind of piques my interest when I see things like that. Okay, so here is a story passed on to me by a friend. A question for the ages via Representative Frederica Wilson, Democrat, Florida. What is more anti-Semitic than displaying the 10 Commandments in public schools? Now, this is a clip you can watch in greater detail. Somebody responded, does she know that Jews follow the 10 Commandments too? So the implication is that if you display the 10 Commandments, that's anti-Semitic. There might also be some element of also displaying a crucifix along with that, which would be considered by many Jews to be anti-Semitic. But yeah, with the, I think, conservative wave, which has come with Donald Trump's reelection, as well as elements of Christian nationalism, there's going to be a renewed call in some places for prayer in public schools, displaying the 10 Commandments, this sort of thing, and with it, the inevitable political controversies. All right, this was something I thought I should pass along because there are going to be a lot of things coming out regarding Charlie Kirk's legacy, what he said about this issue, what he said about that issue. But here's one which, for a lot of people, is out of left field from the Instagram channel UAP Global. Charlie Kirk UFO sighting video. Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA, shared footage on October the 27th, 2024 of a UFO or UAP sighting during a flight from Wisconsin following a Penn State-Wisconsin football game. In the cockpit at 40,000 feet, Kirk and the pilots observed mysterious, bright circular objects circling above them at 80,000 to 100,000 feet. With no radar detection and no clear explanation, Kirk opens the discussion to his viewers, which is exactly what any of us should be doing. You see this? What do you think about it? Are we just seeing some kind of advanced weather balloon or classified military aircraft? Or are we witnessing some kind of extraterrestrial phenomenon? I mean, this is the kind of question which people in the marketplace of ideas do talk about. We don't need to be afraid of the question if we've got God on our side and we've got his ultimate truth with us. But I thought that was funny because a lot of the kind of clips you're going to see circulate from Charlie Kirk, you know, they deal with abortion, they deal with transgender, they deal with, you know, women, they deal with taxes, free speech, whatever it is. Charlie Kirk talked about UFOs. All right, from Open Source Intel, September the 14th. So this was yesterday. Iran just bombed Qatar in June, but now they are sitting together like best buddies discussing Israel's strikes on Hamas. And their commentary is, it's all a clown show. Okay, from Visegrad 24. Yesterday, Moroccan Islamists and Muslim Brotherhood leaders claim they fear Israeli airstrikes. Following the Israeli strike in Qatar, Abdellah Ben Kirani, Secretary General of Morocco's Justice and Development Party, Muslim Brotherhood branch in Rabat, said he fears Israel may bomb his party's headquarters. So, yeah, there's a lot of concern in the Arab world that if Netanyahu is going to go after terrorists, regardless of where they may be, what are we going to do? And does the Arab Islamic world need to band together against Israel? Yeah, the pressure is building. Okay, here's one which has got a lot of people really angry. Open Source Intel passed this along yesterday, September the 14th. Starmer's UK blocks Israelis from attending the elite military academy established by Churchill. Right. Without question, the world is losing patience about the Israel-Gaza conflict. Without question. Okay, from Fox News, this is from yesterday, 1-minute clip. Man arrested after vandalizing Charlie Kirk's memorial outside Turning Point USA's headquarters in Arizona. The suspect has been identified as 19-year-old Ryder Corral. Okay, there was a summit in the Middle East over the weekend, and this is what has got a lot of people concerned, and justifiably so. Breaking, Egypt plans to establish a NATO-style joint Arab force to defend any Arab nation under attack. So, what would an Arab Islamic version of NATO, how would it have responded to Israel attacking Hamas headquarters in Qatar? Yeah, I mean, this is, you know, some people are doubtlessly concluding we're getting closer and closer to a Gog-Magog level event. We're certainly getting closer and closer to something drastic needing to be done in the Middle East. And how many people do you know in the Messianic community who are raising awareness of this? You know, we don't want to be fear-mongering. We want to stay grounded, but we don't want to be ignorant of what's occurring either. Okay, here was a post on X from Elijah Schaefer. And Elijah Schaefer is someone who has questioned the Holocaust. He's no friend of Israel or the Jewish people. He gets into a wide number of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, clips the edges of, well, Hitler wasn't all bad. But here he posts a picture of Mike Huckabee. Well, actually, it was a video. Marco Rubio, Netanyahu, and some other Israeli leaders at the Western Wall. He says, this trip right after Charlie's assassination isn't an accident. It's a warning to all of us. And of course, the implication is what? Well, maybe the Jews were behind. Maybe Israel was behind Charlie Kirk's death. So we have to just be aware of this as Messianic people, because anti-Semitism is on the rise. And we're going to see a repeat of some of the things from 1930s Germany. Okay, here's another post. Breaking: Arab nations have decided to create a NATO-style Arab military force. Middle Eastern countries are getting united to fight against Israel. Now, we know that the news cycle changes from day to day. How many of these Arab Islamic countries don't agree among themselves? And is this something even possible? So those of you all who are concerned about hearing this, you actually have that in your favor. A lot of these Arab countries, they can't stand each other. This civilization thinks it's superior to that civilization. Just looking at Iran, the Persian civilization, Egypt, I mean, those are big rivals. You got Syria, those are big. I mean, they think that they're the oldest, the most advanced civilization in the world. And of course, you got Saudi Arabia. They've got all the Muslim holy sites in their territory. So we don't know how this is going to develop, but should grab our attention to pray to the Lord. What do we need to be doing during this time? All right, so here's a clip passed on by Rapid Response 47, and I thought this was very useful. Just under a minute from Carolyn Levitt, the president's White House press secretary. She had this to say about Charlie Kirk. When so many influential voices in our society are brainwashing young people to abandon our faith, to stay single, not to have children, and to bash our country, Charlie Kirk offered us an alternative path. Charlie celebrated American exceptionalism. Now, it grabbed my attention, and it would grab the attention of a lot of Messianic young people, not to abandon our faith, to bash our country, but this society brainwashing young people to stay single, not to have children. Now, we all agree that the family is the basis of society. Husband, wife, children. But anybody in today's, not just Messianic world, but in the world in general, knows that it can be very difficult for a single man or a single woman to find the right, compatible, heterosexual life partner, right? Because, how much baggage does that man or woman have? What's their life story? Do we have a compatible value system? And it's especially difficult for those in evangelicalism to find a compatible partner. But it's not impossible, because evangelicalism's got great numbers. You go to large events, you meet people. Messianic community, very, very different. The Messianic community has, it's a very small community. There are not a lot of choices for a young man, a young woman. And this is why you do see in the Messianic community a lot of young people who are single in their mid-30s, late 30s, 40s. But that has nothing to do with wanting to eschew marriage and child rearing. It's wanting to be properly, equally yoked. And so this is an issue which comes up from time to time in the Messianic community. We've got some teachings about it on the list of things to do in a future Messianic Insider. We are going to discuss the issue of celibacy, because if you can't find the right man or woman, you have no choice but to stay celibate, to stay single. You should not be forced to marry somebody just because there's another single man or another single woman out there in your community. So we are going to discuss that, because especially as I've seen in Messianic Judaism now, with different, you got the, young groups, but now you've got young professionals groups, which extend all the way into the 40s. People, young people in the Messianic community have a difficult time finding heterosexual spouses. And so this can actually, if we don't have the right frame of mind in terms of, look, marrieds and singles are equal. Marrieds are not superior to singles. They both dispositions have their pros and cons, their advantages and disadvantages. If we don't promote that kind of, I'll just say it, egalitarianism, as is seen in a lot of evangelicalism, we're going to lose young people to the church and the synagogue because people are going to be like, there's really bad choices here, not enough choices here in the Messianic community. But if I went to church, if I went to a synagogue, this would have been taken care of. So we are going to I'm using this as a prompt to discuss this later. Okay, so back to world events. This is from Open Source Intel Defender, 1 minute, 13-second clip from yesterday evening. Speaking this weekend at the Yalta European Security Conference in the Ukrainian capital of Kiev, U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine, retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, stated that Russia is losing in its ongoing war against Ukraine. If he, Putin, was winning, he'd be in Kiev. If he was winning, he'd be west of the Dnipro River. If he was winning, he'd be in Odessa. If he was winning, he'd have changed the government. Russia is, in fact, losing this war. With General Kellogg adding, Russia, left Afghanistan after losing 18,000. We left Vietnam after losing 65,000. They've lost over 1 million dead or wounded. These numbers are World War II level numbers, and these are first-line units that they tried to take Kiev with. Yeah. And seeing this, and there are a lot of factors which play into, what happened in this conflict, Russia-Ukraine. How did it get started? And why is there all this death? And why does it seem that Vladimir Putin can't listen to reason? I mean, I remember that we were all very optimistic about the summit held in Alaska a few weeks ago. And then he goes back to Russia, and then he launches, a huge offensive against civilians. I mean, what the hell? And I know that, I've talked to people I know from the former Soviet Union. What is the mindset over there? Why do we just see this continuing ongoing war? And there have been a lot of theories proposed, which we're not going to get into. But, the objective of President Trump has been to stop the killing. And when you see some of those numbers, it's like, yeah, stop the killing. We don't need any more people dead. World War II level numbers. Why? And because after a while, it's not about who said what, who did what. It's about stop the killing and start the peace. Okay, this is a video which came across my feed last night on YouTube. It's from the channel Lauren the Mortician. So if you want to know a lot about the funeral industry, watch this channel. Why Charlie Kirk looked that way in his casket. Embalmer reacts. And of course, you can see his hands, and they look kind of orange. First of all, this specifically addressed some of the uncomfortable aspects of the funeral business, the funeral industry, embalming someone who has been through a tragic death, preparing them for viewing, how the embalming works, some of the environmental aspects of it, the expertise or lack thereof of the embalmer, because a lot of people are claiming Charlie Kirk's still alive. That's just a mannequin. Look at his hands. They don't even look real. And actually, any of you who have been at a funeral, any of you who have been around the funeral industry, around a funeral home, you may even know a family member who is a funeral director. That's what an embalmed body can look like. And she also goes into how there's probably an autopsy. So, that's why his chest looked the way it did. Charlie Kirk is deceased. And, as a funeral director, a funeral embalmer, Lauren the Mortician goes into how don't entertain these conspiracy theories. That's Charlie Kirk. And also keep in mind that Erica Kirk did not have to post those pictures. I was kind of shocked just, seeing her at the open casket, praying or, crying over her husband. That was a lot. But then to even see just his hands. So don't entertain conspiracy theories about Charlie Kirk. He is deceased. It's sad. It's tragic. Anyway, you want to know more about the funeral industry, you can watch that clip. And she goes into a lot of other things, which, yes, are a little morbid. But if you are in congregational leadership, this is the kind of behind the scenes thing it's useful to know about, because sooner or later you're going to have to lead a funeral at a funeral home, a graveside. And this is one of those nuts and bolts things that, well, I don't know anything about the funeral industry. Go watch a couple of videos like this and you'll be quickly educated. Okay, we got 5 more stories to go through. I'll wrap this up quickly. From open source intel today in the morning, September the 15th, Netanyahu warned Israel may need a self-sufficient defense economy if arms imports are blocked, saying, "We're Athens and Sparta and will be Athens and Super Sparta." Yeah, that's the other thing a lot of people haven't factored into this. A number of countries, of course, the United States probably is the biggest one, but even countries like Germany, the United Kingdom, which have been exporting arms to Israel, what if that eventually stops? This is awful. This is a terrible situation Israel is in. So that's why there's prophetic speculation. Who's going to solve the Middle East problem? Maybe the beast. Okay, on the Russia-Ukraine front, Visegrad 24 today. Putin planned to seize Ukraine in 4 days, and it's been 4 years. Finnish President Alex Stubb said, noting that Putin has failed to achieve his goals. He wanted to divide the West. Now it is more united than ever. He sought to reduce NATO spending, but Trump raised it from 2% to 5%, he added. And there's a 50-second clip there you can watch. But I can guarantee you, what do all countries want to do? They don't want to have to increase defense spending. They want to decrease defense spending because there's peace. Okay, from open source intel, President of Egypt, Sisi. The summit is held amid serious challenges, the summit about Israel attacking Qatar, Hamas headquarters in Qatar, and Israel seeks to turn the region into a playground for attacks. I renew the call for the immediate recognition of the state of Palestine, considering that the only way to achieve the two-state solution. Okay, so President of Egypt, Sisi, who is actually kind of a moderate in the Middle East. Some of you all remember how following Hosni Mubarak being forced out, there was a new president who was from the Islamic Brotherhood. He got in there, and then there was another debacle, and then Sisi came in and he's tried to stabilize things the best he could. But Egypt recognizing Israel, going back to the Camp David Accords, of course, is a very big deal. And for Egypt to question, what's going to happen to our peace treaty with Israel, that's huge, because what it means is that, again, the world is losing patience over the Israel-Gaza war. Whether you like it or not, that's just the reality. Okay, this is from open source intel Defender today. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov stated earlier today that, while speaking to reporters from the state-run news agency RIA Novosti, NATO is at war with Russia. This is obvious and requires no further proof. NATO is de facto involved in this war. NATO provides both indirect and direct support to Kiev. Therefore, it can be said with absolute certainty that NATO is at war with Russia. Okay, and guess who the largest member of NATO is? The United States of America. And we need to be, if that is the opinion of a spokesperson in the Russian government, we need to be very thankful this war, as terrible as it is, as many lives as have been lost, it has stayed relatively conventional. We really need to be thankful of that. But this shows you how fragile and unstable the world actually is. Okay, and then our final story from today, open source intel. Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani urged stronger action, stating, "We shouldn't be content with merely holding an emergency summit, but rather take concrete steps to address the state of power madness, arrogance, and bloodthirsty obsession that has befallen the government of Israel." Okay, so we know that each action has an equally powerful reaction sometimes. And, in a week, we're going to be remembering the fall high holidays. starting with Rosh Hashanah. There are going to be a lot of people, a lot of world leaders going to the United Nations. In all probability, there are going to be a lot of Western powers, which have thus far not recognized an independent state of Palestine, recognize it. And you better be praying about these things. You better be lifting them up before the Lord in your different congregational and synagogue services, not just going rote through a number of the traditional prayers. And look, I'm all for liturgy, but these are very serious times. And how many people are going to act like it's just going to blow over? Nothing's different. Nothing's changed. I'm concerned. I am concerned. But that's why we have Messianic Insider 5 times a week. And that is why we are going to maximize our gift of free speech and exchange of ideas while we have it. On behalf of Outreach Israel Ministries and Messianic Apologetics, I would like to sincerely thank you for your ongoing prayers, encouragement, and support for all of our ministry efforts. I encourage you to access our website, messianicapologetics.net. There you can find a wide number of free articles, frequently asked questions entries, different back issues of Outreach Israel News, and you can go and check out back episodes of Messianic Insider, some McKee moment shorts, and look into a number of our other adventures and activities over the years. We'll see you again tomorrow with another episode of Messianic Insider. Until then, may God bless you, shalom, and take care.